My parents kicked me out on my 16th birthday so that my pregnant sister and her boyfriend could move back in, then got mad when I exposed them online. I, 16M, need to vent about the absolute dumpster fire that is my family situation right now. So I've always known I wasn't the favorite child. It wasn't even subtle. My parents have always made it painfully obvious that they preferred my older sister Natalie over me. She was the popular, pretty cheerleader type in high school with tons of friends, while I'm more of the awkward kid who's never even had a girlfriend. I've spent most of my life just trying to stay out of everyone's way and not cause problems. But what happened last week when I turned 16? That crap took things to a whole new level. My birthday started like any other day in my house, meaning absolutely zero acknowledgement that it was my special day. No happy birthday, no cake, nothing. I wasn't even surprised, honestly. This was business as usual. But then my parents came into my room early in the morning, and for a split second, I thought maybe they remembered. Spoiler alert, they did not come bearing gifts. Well, not for me anyway. They woke me up and told me to start packing my stuff. Just like that. On my birthday. Turns out my sister Natalie is 8 months pregnant, and they decided that she, her boyfriend, who's like 24 with a steady job and his own apartment BTW, and the baby all needed their own bedrooms in our house. And since we only have 4 bedrooms total, guess who drew the short straw? Yep, yours truly. I just sat there in complete silence, trying to process what was happening. Who kicks out their kid on their birthday? After a few uncomfortable minutes of me not responding, they threw in their generous offer: they'd cover all my expenses until I turned 18, as long as I wasn't living under their roof anymore. Gee, thanks for fulfilling your basic legal obligation, I guess? The whole time this was going down, Natalie wasn't even home. That was 100% intentional. They didn't want her to witness this crap show and feel guilty about it. Up until that moment, I thought my sister and I had a decent relationship. Not close, but civil, you know? But in that moment I realized my entire family just didn't care about me. At all. I'm not gonna lie, I felt absolutely crushed. What 16-year-old wouldn't? But I also knew from years of experience that nothing I could say would magically make them love me or want me around. So I spent my sweet 16 stuffing all my belongings into garbage bags. They didn't even give me proper boxes, just trash bags. My parents helped me pack, but honestly they were just speeding up the process of getting me out. When we finished, they drove me to my uncle's place, chatting happily the entire trip like they were dropping me off at summer camp or something. At one point my mom turned to my dad with this huge smile and said, "Hey, now that op's gone, we can finally order some Indian food." Like my existence was the only thing stopping them from enjoying takeout. When we got to my uncle's place, they didn't even hug me goodbye. No good luck or anything. They just pulled up to the sidewalk, waited for me to get out, and drove off before I even made it to the front door. I was standing there with trash bags full of my stuff feeling like actual garbage myself. But then something unexpected happened. My uncle opened the door, took one look at me, and wrapped me in this huge bear hug. It was so warm and genuine that I completely broke down crying. That simple act of kindness made me realize just how terrible my parents actually are. Once I calmed down enough to talk, I explained everything to my uncle. He seemed genuinely shocked and asked me to repeat the whole story again. As I recounted the morning's events, I watched his friendly smile transform into this angry scowl. Without saying anything, he grabbed his phone and disappeared into another room. Suddenly, I heard my uncle screaming through the walls. This was completely out of character for him. He's super chill and soft-spoken, like the most mellow dude you'll ever meet. I knew instantly that someone had seriously pissed him off, and I had a pretty good idea who. When he came back, his face was bright red with anger. Turns out my dad, his brother, had fed him a completely different story. My dad told him that I had requested this living arrangement myself and was totally cool with moving out of my childhood home. That explained why my uncle had agreed to take me in. He thought it was my idea. After that call, my uncle grabbed me a pint of Ben & Jerry's, cookie dough, if anyone's curious, and sat me down. He looked me straight in the eyes and said he was sorry for not doing something sooner. He told me my parents are the adults in this situation, and my safety and happiness should have always been their priority. I'm not gonna lie, Reddit. I choked up and had to fight back tears when he said that. Those were the words I've been longing to hear since I was 6 years old, when my parents first told me I was worthless. Yeah, they started that crap early. But even with my uncle's reassurance, I was still furious. My parents had literally chosen to give their guest room to Natalie's boyfriend, a grown-ass adult with a job and his own apartment lease, instead of their actual son. So I decided to expose them online and let the internet deal with them. I wasn't sure if my uncle would approve, so I waited until he went for his afternoon nap. Then I posted everything, the favoritism, the insults, and of course, the borderline abandonment on my birthday. By the time I hit post, tears were streaming down my face. I immediately turned my phone off because I was terrified of the consequences. An hour later, curiosity got the better of me, and I turned my phone back on. That's when I learned why people always say be careful what you post online, because that crap went viral. But not just to random strangers. To all the wrong, or right, people. My post had been seen by tons of relatives, and my inbox was flooded with messages from my parents and even my sister. Meanwhile, numerous family members had commented expressing their support. Several had texted offering help if I needed anything at all. That felt pretty uplifting. Until I read my parents' messages. Oh crap, you guys. They were furious about what I'd shared and demanded I delete the post immediately. My dad said horrible things, even wrote that he wished I'd never been born. Painful, but honestly not surprising at this point. My mom's messages were similarly nasty. My sister's messages stood out as different, though. She didn't say much except requesting to speak with me in person if possible. I felt completely overwhelmed by all the responses and just put my phone away again, ignoring everyone for the next couple days. I did block my parents though, since I had zero interest in communicating with them anymore. They're legally obligated to support me financially until I'm 18, and beyond that? I saw no reason to maintain contact. When my uncle finally woke up from his nap, he rushed into the living room where I'd been sitting since arriving and calmly asked if I'd posted something online. After showing him everything, he seemed completely fine with what I'd done. And if my dad tried reaching him in the following days, he never mentioned it to me. We carried on like nothing happened, which confirmed he supported my actions 100%. That was all the validation I needed. For about a week, I had virtually no interaction with my parents. Then they suddenly appeared outside my school as I was leaving, looking absolutely livid. My friends, who are actual angels BTW and were fully aware of the situation, formed a protective barrier around me so I wouldn't have to engage if I didn't want to. But my parents kept shouting my name until I finally responded. I marched straight up to them and declared I wanted nothing to do with them anymore, but they completely ignored that and insisted I needed to come home with them immediately. I couldn't understand why they suddenly wanted me back when they made it crystal clear I wasn't important to them at all. It felt like a desperate attempt to salvage their reputation among relatives. I refused to go anywhere until they explained what was happening. When they said they didn't want my friends overhearing, I told my buddies to step back so we could talk privately. Once my friends were out of earshot, they revealed the real reason they needed me back. Get this, Reddit, they needed me back because they had to reconcile with me to secure their inheritance. After my post went viral in our family, my grandparents had discovered everything. And my dad's parents? They're seriously wealthy. They threatened my dad that continuing to treat me this way would cost him his inheritance. They'd stated that unless my parents reconciled with me, treated me better, and ensured I felt loved and cared for, whatever my father was supposed to inherit would go to my uncle instead, since he was taking care of me without obligation. My dad couldn't afford losing this inheritance. We're talking serious money here. My parents earned decent combined incomes themselves, but this inheritance was life-changing money. The difference is, I would have had enough sense not to make it seem like they were doing me a favor by taking me back. Because this wasn't about me at all, just their own financial interests. Even then, they lacked the basic intelligence to at least pretend they genuinely wanted me home, so I told them I couldn't care less about their inheritance and walked away without listening to another word, ignoring their shouts as I left. I caught the bus back to my uncle's place and described the school confrontation, which annoyed him too. To prevent future incidents, he contacted his attorney about changing my custody arrangement. Legally, my parents still had rights over me, and that needed to change if I was going to permanently live with my uncle. I also called my grandparents to thank them for intervening, but explained I genuinely didn't want to return to my parents because after just a few days with my uncle, I finally felt free for the first time in my life. Living with my parents had been suffocating. Despite constantly hoping things would improve, they never did. My grandparents live in a different state, so we rarely meet. But during family gatherings and holidays, my parents always behaved perfectly, so my grandparents never witnessed how I was treated at home. It wasn't outright cruelty, but constant indifference and dismissal. Everything appeared normal superficially, but anyone spending a few days with us would notice how they basically pretended I didn't exist, while focusing entirely on my sister. After her pregnancy, it worsened dramatically, and I became completely invisible. I explained all this to my grandparents, who assured me that if living with my uncle was what I wanted, they'd make it happen. If my parents surrendered their rights, my grandparents would ensure all my needs were covered. I felt optimistic after that conversation because things were finally improving, but that didn't last long when I received an email from my dad several hours later. It wasn't hateful or cruel this time, just disappointingly manipulative. He claimed I shouldn't have publicly posted about the situation when my grandparents would have heard about it anyway through my uncle. Now beyond my grandparents' anger, they faced massive backlash from relatives and social isolation, which he considered unfair. He mentioned some colleagues discovered the post since it appeared in their feeds when he was tagged, creating problems at his workplace. According to him, my actions caused unnecessary drama in their lives. Like, sorry not sorry for posting about how my parents forced me out on my 16th birthday to give my pregnant sister's baby my bedroom? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, Dad. Update 1. Before sharing what happened next, thank you everyone for taking time to comment on my post. Your supportive words mean everything to me right now. Addressing questions about why I hadn't left before and waited for them to kick me out, especially with my grandparents and uncle willing to help. The truth is, I wasn't treated with outright cruelty. Like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't actively abused, just consistently ignored and treated as unwanted. That's definitely a form of mistreatment, but in my mind, I was grateful I wasn't being physically hurt or verbally attacked. I had shelter and food, so I convinced myself I was fine and didn't need to feel loved or valued. I'd normalized the neglect so completely that I didn't even recognize it as abnormal anymore. As for why I never reached out to extended family for help, I honestly didn't want to burden anyone. I constantly worried about what would happen if they refused, and my parents discovered I'd asked. That would have made my home situation way worse since my folks are obsessed with appearances. When I was around 12, I once casually mentioned to my mom that my friend's parents took him out for dinner for his birthday, and she immediately snapped back with, "Well, they actually wanted him." That kind of stuff really messes with your head when you're growing up. You start to internalize it and believe maybe there is something wrong with you. Maybe you don't deserve love or attention. It takes years to unlearn that kind of thinking. Looking back now, there were so many red flags I just accepted as normal. Like how my parents would attend all of Natalie's school events but skip mine, claiming they were too busy. Or how they'd put her artwork on the fridge but toss mine in the trash when they thought I wasn't looking. Or how my dad would introduce us to colleagues as my daughter Natalie and him. Not even using my name. I can count on one hand the number of times they've called me by my actual name instead of just hey or you in the past year. My birthday has never been a big deal in our house. When I turned 10, they forgot completely. When I turned 13, they got me a gift card to a store I'd never even mentioned liking. Meanwhile, Natalie's birthdays were huge events with parties and decorations and expensive presents. One year they literally took her to Disney World for her birthday. Me? I got a $15 gift card to Target and was told to not spend it all in one place. That's why I kept everything bottled up and suffered quietly. I didn't think anyone would believe me or care enough to help. My uncle never offered to take me in because he didn't want to offend my parents, plus he wasn't sure I'd even want to live with him. So while this didn't happen earlier, the way things unfolded organically probably worked out better in the end. It came late, but hey, better late than never, right? He's currently working with a lawyer to transfer custody rights to him, which is going to be a massive battle now that inheritance money is involved. But even if this goes to court, my grandparents and uncle have promised to back me completely. My uncle's been super apologetic since I arrived because he's finally realized how neglected I was at home and feels terrible for never addressing it because he thought it wasn't his place to interfere. At least everything's out in the open now with my family, and I'm feeling more hopeful about my future. Living with my uncle these past couple weeks has been such an eye-opener. He asks about my day and actually listens to my answers. He makes sure there's food I like in the fridge. He knocked on my door yesterday just to show me a funny dog video he thought I'd enjoy. These tiny acts of basic human kindness make me realize just how little I was getting at home. The first night at his place, he ordered pizza and we watched a movie together. When I mentioned I had a math test coming up, he offered to help me study. Little things that probably seem normal to most people feel revolutionary to me. It's like I've been living in a desert my whole life and someone finally offered me a glass of water. Now, about my sister Natalie. In my original post, I mentioned she texted asking to meet in person, but I ignored her message because I didn't know how to respond. She'd never been directly cruel to me, she just adopted our parents' distant behavior. Throughout my life, she remained aloof, but on the rare occasions we did interact, she was generally pleasant. I assumed the whole kick me out for her boyfriend and baby plan was her idea, which felt like she was finally showing her true colors by actively harming me. So I ghosted her message completely. Our relationship was always awkward and tense, but I still preferred her to our parents since she'd at least be decent whenever we actually spoke. It wasn't her fault our parents favored her so obviously. So 3 days ago, when she texted again asking me to visit, I decided to call and ask why she wanted to see me. I refused to go back to my parents' house where I assumed she'd be. But surprisingly, she told me she was staying at her boyfriend's apartment. She wasn't feeling well enough to go out due to the pregnancy, she's like ready to pop any day now, so she asked if I'd come over to discuss everything happening with our family. She mentioned having several important things to tell me face to face. Out of pure curiosity, I decided to visit. When I arrived, she immediately apologized for never defending me, even though she clearly knew our parents played favorites and consistently dismissed me. They constantly ignored my achievements while celebrating hers, and I was transparently the unwanted child, but she never tried fixing that. She admitted she just felt too uncomfortable confronting our parents, so she let it continue. Since I seemed to be handling the treatment okay, she felt less responsible to speak up. Now she realized how messed up the whole situation was and genuinely wanted to make amends. She also revealed that our parents never discussed the living arrangements with her at all. She was completely blindsided learning they'd kicked me out to accommodate her baby and boyfriend, claiming she had absolutely no idea this had happened. She never requested any such arrangement. Her actual plan was to stay with our parents only until the baby was a couple months old before moving in with her boyfriend. She'd wanted to move out sooner, but stayed solely because our parents begged her to. However, after reading my post, she realized she couldn't continue enabling their behavior and moved out within a week. This sparked a massive fight with our parents who insisted she was making a terrible decision. They're currently not even speaking because they accused her of being ungrateful and selfish. None of which is true since she never promised them anything, they just made assumptions. Natalie showed me the texts our parents had been sending her, and they were wild. Stuff like after everything we've done for you and we're trying to give your child the best life possible and you're choosing your brother over your own baby. Classic manipulation tactics. She said she finally saw through it all after reading about how they treated me. She even told me about conversations she'd overheard our parents having about me over the years. Apparently, they'd complain about having to deal with me when they thought no one was listening. She said she always felt uncomfortable but never knew how to bring it up with me or them. She'd tried a few times to suggest they be nicer to me, but they'd dismiss her concerns or change the subject. So all that drama was ultimately pointless since my parents ended up losing both their kids. At least she apologized for being a crappy sister in general, which I forgave because holding on to bitterness wasn't going to help me heal. We cleared the air completely, and she promised the same thing my uncle did, that from now on, she'd always have my back no matter what. She asked if I'd be interested in being part of her baby's life as an uncle, which actually made me tear up a bit. I said yes, of course. Despite everything, I'm excited about being an uncle. The baby shouldn't have to suffer because our parents are terrible people. Natalie and I exchanged contact info and promised to stay in touch regularly. I think we might actually develop a real sibling relationship for the first time in our lives. It's been just under a week since my original post, and I've heard nothing from my parents since that email. So I'm guessing they've finally given up trying to get me back. I'm pretty sure my grandparents intervened since they called midweek to assure me my parents wouldn't bother me at school or send more emails. I hadn't even mentioned Dad's email to them, so clearly there must have been some conversation between my parents and grandparents behind the scenes. I don't know exactly what was discussed, but it seems my parents have finally accepted defeat. My grandparents told me not to worry about any of the legal stuff and to focus on school and adjusting to life with my uncle. They said they'd handle everything else. I'm so grateful to have them on my side. I've also started seeing a therapist my uncle found for me. We've only had 2 sessions so far, but it feels good to talk to someone professional about all this. She's helping me understand that none of this was my fault and that my parents' behavior reflects on them, not on me. It's going to take a long time to fully process everything, but I'm at least heading in the right direction now. Update 2. Only 3 days since my last update, and today my uncle announced my parents have agreed to surrender their parental rights. The paperwork should be completed soon, and he'll officially take over legal custody. I'm experiencing seriously mixed emotions right now. On one hand, I'm thrilled to finally have a home where I don't constantly feel unwanted and irrelevant, but I'm also feeling strangely empty and melancholic about certain aspects. It feels surreal that this is actually happening, but ultimately, this is the right path forward. This is exactly what I needed. My therapist says it's normal to grieve the relationship I always wanted with my parents, even if that relationship never actually existed. I'm not grieving the actual parents I had, they were awful, but the parents I deserved and never got. That made a lot of sense to me. It's weird to think that I'm legally no longer their son. Like, they're giving me up. Again. Even though this is what I want, there's still this tiny part of me that feels rejected all over again. My therapist says this is a natural response and that these feelings will eventually fade as I build a new life with people who actually care about me. I've been having some trouble sleeping since all this started. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night in a panic, thinking I'm back at my parents' house. Then I remember I'm at my uncle's place, and this overwhelming sense of relief washes over me. It's like my brain is still catching up to reality. My uncle has been amazing through all this. He's giving me space when I need it but also making sure I don't isolate myself too much. He's talking about redecorating the guest room, my room now, I guess, however I want. I've never been allowed to put posters up or paint the walls before. It's a small thing, but it means a lot. School has been a welcome distraction. My grades are actually improving now that I'm not constantly stressed at home. My friends have been supportive too. A couple of them have gone through their own family drama, so they get it. They don't ask too many questions but let me talk when I need to. I'm lucky to have them. Update 3. Hey, everyone. A couple weeks have passed since my uncle officially became my legal guardian. Major win. I also discovered my parents only relinquished custody because after I told my grandparents I refused to return home, they presented my parents with an ultimatum: lose their entire inheritance, or keep 50% of what they were originally going to receive, but give up custody and promise never to contact me again without my permission. Guess which option my parents chose? Lamau. Not surprised whatsoever, and honestly, I couldn't care less because it just confirms I dodged a major bullet. Good riddance. My uncle told me that during the final paperwork signing, my dad didn't even look sad. My mom apparently shed a few tears, but my uncle thinks it was more about the lost inheritance money than about losing me. They didn't ask for any visitation rights or even for updates about how I'm doing. They just signed the papers and left. In a way, their complete indifference makes this easier. There's no ambiguity, no false hope that maybe they secretly cared about me all along. They made their choice, and now I'm free to make mine. I'm still regularly talking with my sister though. She had her baby last week, a healthy little girl named Lily. She sent me pictures, and I'm planning to visit them this weekend. My parents are desperately trying to reconcile with her before she completely cuts them off too, but she's demanding personal space right now and has told them to stop hounding her daily. She's worried they only want access to their grandchild for appearance's sake, not because they genuinely care. She's setting firm boundaries and says she won't let them treat her daughter the way they treated me. I'm proud of her for standing up to them, even if it took all this drama for her to finally see them for who they really are. My grandparents have been incredibly generous. They've set up a college fund for me and are helping my uncle with any expenses related to my care. They've also invited us to spend the summer with them. I've never really gotten to know them before since we only saw them on holidays, so I'm looking forward to building a relationship with them now. At this point, I can't help but laugh at the absolute dumpster fire my parents have created for our family, but whatever. I'm happy living with my uncle, and that's all that matters to me now. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have a real future ahead of me, one where I'm surrounded by people who actually care if I'm happy or not. My therapist says that with time, the hurt will fade, and I'll be able to build a life without the shadow of my parents' neglect hanging over me. I'm starting to believe her. Each day gets a little easier than the last. Sometimes I wonder if my parents ever think about me or regret what they did. But then I remember it doesn't actually matter. Their feelings aren't my problem anymore. I get to focus on myself now, my happiness, my goals, my future. And honestly, that future is looking pretty bright. TLDR, my parents kicked me out on my 16th birthday to make room for my pregnant sister and her BF. I exposed them online, grandparents threatened to cut off inheritance, and now I live with my awesome uncle who is officially my legal guardian. Edit. Oh crap, this blew up. Thank you all for the support and awards. I never expected this response. Edit 2. To answer some common questions, yes, I'm in therapy now, my uncle set it up, and yes, I'm doing way better. My grades are even improving. Edit 3. For those asking, no, I don't plan to contact my parents again. And yes, I'll update if anything major happens with my sister and the baby.